Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? You know, whether people believe in God or not, that's your own prerogative. But for those of us who absolutely positively believe in God, we see little miracles happen all the time. You see, when it comes to the evil people, the reason why the evil people never win is because of their pride and their greed and their thirst for power. Their decision making always comes back to bite them in the ass. It never fails. They can get on a great roll just when things seem to be at its darkest moment. Their pride gets in the way of their success. They start becoming cocky, a lot more bold, a lot more open about their criminality, until it boomerangs and comes back and destroys their whole plan. Take globalization, for instance. We know that this World Economic Forum, this great reset, we hear it all the time, these globalists. They want to take over the world, a new world order, and run things the way they want to run things. And we see in our government how bold these criminals are. They openly commit crimes right in front of us. And we see it. They don't care because they believe they're untouchable. Well, why wouldn't they feel that way? When they hold political offices, when our own intelligence agencies, our own judicial system, our own Supreme Court, our own military are all part of the same crime family. It makes you sit back and wonder, who can we turn to? Who is going to fix this problem? Then one day you wake up from the cold, hard truth slapping you in your face and telling you, what the heck do you mean? What do? We, the people around the world, outnumber those criminals by a very large margin. Why do you suppose they're doing what they're doing with the jabs? Why do you suppose they're trying to starve us? They're trying to reduce the number of us out there to a more manageable number. Something interesting is going on. I said this before in videos. One day you wake up, it looks like we are winning this fight. The next day it looks like they're winning this fight. It's tug of war back and forth. But I want people to really sit back and stop buying into that crap that's going around on YouTube seriously, that these people have been to Gitmo and that they've been executing their clones. Because that's the kind of crap that's going to get you to soften up, drop your guard, and get you caught up. Continue to stay grounded. Even if all that's true until they announce it, you should be guarded at all times. This way you're not caught off guard. Now I'm going to show you an example of what happens when these criminals wake up the sleeping masses who can no longer be divided by frivolous crap. Start standing up and go, enough is enough. Before we get started, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel and I surely do appreciate it. Don't be fooled by the spot market value of gold and silver going down. I've said this before and I'll say it over and over again. Precious metals have other values other than the monetary side of that investment. We're talking about your freedom. When you go to buy your gold and silver, go check out our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. I got a text from Jules this morning saying, hey, check out this video. There's a guy comes on to say, wow, every once in a while, the bad people let the truth slip out. And when that happens, it has a way of jarring the masses and waking them up. Well, I wouldn't say so much that this is one of those jarring moments, but something else came out of this meeting that I caught. So first, let's start on this. It says, oops, our bad. The IMF director admits we printed too much money. You think? But that was part of the plan. They wanted to weaken currencies, lower down their value, lowering the purchasing price. Many countries devalued their currency. What you got to pay attention to is how the heck is the American dollar as valuable as it is, especially after all the printing. And people are going to say, well, it's the reserve dollar, Pimpy. That's why. Everybody needs the dollars. Because all their debt is in American dollars, they have to pay back in American dollars. Oh, really? Says who? What happens when countries decide they don't want that agreement and they don't want to use American dollars in it? Then what happens? Well, in the same meeting that I'm about to show you a clip from, they talked about that. What is their biggest concerns? Not only did the lady say that, oops, we printed too much money, But she also said the problem that America might have is as these countries start waking up from globalization and they realize that too much money was printed out there and that the money has no value, those dollars are going to start coming back into the United States. And when that happens, the value of the dollar dies. There's no demand for it. No demand for it around the world. So now there's too many dollars out there. Think supply and demand. The dollar becomes worthless. Right now, they're lying to us talking about how great our economy is. Yeah, we're a great economy. Yeah, the stock markets are doing great, even though they're manipulated. All that truth is coming out. And there's other plans for them to force us into the central bank digital currency. Well, what happens when one government stands up and says, you know, enough's enough? We don't want to participate in this movement. Let's continue down this article. It says mostly we get lies, spins, and obfuscation from central bankers, politicians, and bureaucrats. But every once in a while, one of these people accidentally wanders into the truth. So the IMF director, Kristalina Georgieva, did just that during a recent panel discussion hosted by CNBC. She conceded that the central banks globally printed too much money and didn't think of the unintended consequences. I think we are not paying sufficient attention to the law of unintended consequences. We take decisions with an objective in mind and really think through what may happen that is not our objective, and then we wrestle with the impact of it. Do you understand what she's saying? They do things half-ass. They think of the short term, not long term. And they do this with our lives and our money. In the end, it's the people who pay for it, not these individuals. What we should be doing is going after all these huge corporations, liquidating them, and putting the money back to we the people. That's what we should be doing. She goes on to say, take any decision that is a massive decision, like the decision that we need to spend to support the economy. Yeah, artificially pumping up the economy, quantitative easing. At that time, we did recognize that maybe too much money in circulation and too few goods. Do you hear what she's saying? We did recognize. So they knew this was a problem. And what's Biden doing today? He's asking for more money. $33 trillion right now. Can you believe this? They said we did recognize that maybe too much money in circulation and too few goods, but didn't really quite think through the consequences in a way that upfront would have informed better what we do. She's literally going out and saying that these bankers that are making all these policy decisions without our permission, paying for these different projects around the world, trying to globalize everybody, trying to force everybody on the same page, which is this New World Order agenda, with the one world currency, the central bank digital currency, with the one world government. I showed you a video that these people are pushing into what's known as the electronic government, that eventually people are going to wake up and go, hell no. It continues, how this economic brain trust failed to consider the injecting trillions into the economy would cause prices to rise is a bit of a head scratcher. Exactly. This is economics 101. Expanding the money supply pushes prices higher than they otherwise would be. Peter Schiff knew this would happen. Heck, you probably knew this would happen. Yep, I did. I told everybody. But the people charged with running the global economy didn't. And these people want to be entrusted with running the world? They still want us to keep them up there and trust that what they're doing is the right thing. And these are the same people who are now admitting that they failed Basic Economics 101. I'll leave the link to this article down below. I cannot stress this enough for you to take a few minutes out to read this. It's important for you to see what's going on. And you should be pissed off that these people were bad-mouthing us, scolding us, shaming us, that we should do more for people around the world, and that this money is out there to benefit. No, no, no. You see, it might benefit some countries, but it hurts the country that's actually doing the helping. I'm going to play part of her speech right now. It's sped up a little bit because they talk really slow. But something interesting that the host brings up. Listen to what they say.
When the IMF was created, the main objective was to help countries correct domestic policies that are undermining their opportunities to grow and create employment.
They said when we didn't put these people in office. Let's keep that in mind. We didn't vote these people in office. They're unelected bureaucrats. But you heard what she said. When we were formed and we made the decisions. America, our Constitution is very strict on any individual or outside entities determining our monetary policies. It is forbidden. She said that our countries were missing out on employment opportunities. I don't know what she's talking about. Because you see, prior to this whole globalization crap, America is one of the largest manufacturers of goods. Once this globalist started kicking in, we started sending our jobs overseas because the labor was cheaper. A lot of our products are made overseas. China makes 95% of our pharmaceutical goods. Do you trust them? Russia is responsible for supplying the world with fertilizer. I know people are going, well, just go down and get some cow crap. No, you don't get it. There is a special way that fertilizer is made, and Russia does it. You see, when they wanted to go into this globalist agenda, they wanted some things made in specific areas, and then the rest of the world would just surrender to the fact that these people would be in charge of this product, these people would be in charge of that product, making it. But they never thought of what happens. One of them wants to go into a war and then cuts everybody off from the fertilizer that's going to affect our food products, that affects our wheat products. So that what about our bread? That most of the lithium mined in the earth is done in Russia for the batteries. And China, if they get pissed, can cut us off from our pharmaceutical goods. Like I said, 95% of it's manufactured over there. See, they didn't think about this kind of stuff. And now what's happening is you're seeing other world leaders coming forward and go, no. We don't want anything to do with this globalization. Let's start focusing back on our people first. Like Trump said, we have to help ourselves before we go around helping other people. Trump never said we wouldn't help other people. He's saying first, our politicians are responsible to those they hold office for, which is their own citizens.
We live in a world in which there are exogenous shocks that are harming countries and are putting them in a position in which on their own they simply cannot handle it. And the question in front of us is, how do we recognize that it is not bad governance, it is not bad policies, it is a climate shock, a pandemic, a war?
Listen to what she's saying. It's not bad governments, it's not bad policies. Yes, it is. She just said it was. And now she's turning around going, well, it's not bad government, it's not bad policy. Yes, it is. It's amazing to me that a non-politician, CEO, a reality TV star, went into the White House and did all the remarkable things he did. He was so successful at what he's done that these globalists have been attacking him nonstop. But Trump has not been indicted or convicted on any crimes whatsoever. He's been impeached twice and found innocent both times. All of this is to keep Trump from going back into office and destroying this globalist movement. This lady is blaming climate change as the reason for the globalist failures. Well, the climate didn't make you print more money. The climate didn't make the RONA. Men did. The climate didn't make everybody go in unnecessary lockdowns or take unnecessary jabs. Bad politicians and bad policies are what does that. You could blame it on the climate all you want because the climate won't defend itself.
The second issue, though, is that not all problems are exogenous. We still have plenty of problems that come because of poor judgment, bad governance, corruption.
Didn't she just say, literally a couple sentences ago, that the failure isn't because of governments and policies? And now she's saying, in addition to the climate, we have corrupt and bad governments and policies. Make up your mind, lady.
When Christine was the managing director here in 2018, early 2019, in these good days that we almost forgot existed, she would say, when the sun is shining, fix the roof. Mm-hmm. What we are now discovering is that many countries did not fix the roof when the sun is shining. Now it is
Okay, now haven't heard what she just said, if that makes sense. In other words, when the opportunity presents itself, not when you're on the lowest point, but when you're on your highest point, fix all the things that need fixed and protect yourself from a rainy day. And she's saying what they found out is many of these countries did not do that. If that's the case, then why do we continue to bail them out? We shouldn't be responsible for other countries. The people in that country are responsible for their own leaders and the way their country's being ran. If you're tired of it, then stand up and do something about it. Does anybody remember the Arab Spring? When people got tired of something and rose up and did something about it.
You mentioned the role of the IMF. There is this bigger question right now
Here we go. Listen to what she's saying.
about the role of globalization in general and the onshoring of manufacturing and supply chain. And it started with COVID, or maybe even before that, and really got exacerbated by this war in Ukraine. And obviously, Chair Powell, there are going to be ramifications of this for growth and for inflation if we are, in fact, in a world where globalization is going in reverse, or even...
Trump pointed that out for us. We had been outsourcing our manufacturing. The problem is we had China making the motherboards that's being installed into our military vehicles. Let me repeat that. The computer systems that we install into our fighter jets, our tanks, our ships, navigation, our helicopters, were all being created by our enemy. All of a sudden, we started seeing an increased number of jets crashing, helicopters crashing, military ships running into one another. Well, why do you suppose that is? Well, what do you suppose China did? They started installing little chips that sent back data to them that told them where we were, that helped them to override the ship's control and put it in their hands. They were loving this. When Trump got in office, the first thing he did is had all those hardware systems ripped out and new ones installed. Then all of those plane crashes and helicopter crashes and boat crashes, gone. So she's saying it looks like globalization is ending. Well, let's point out again that Trump was bringing back all the manufacturing to this country where it belongs by slapping tariffs on these countries. He forced them to bring the manufacturing back here. And look what happened. We had the lowest unemployment across the board for every demographics, male, female, whites, black, Hispanics, Asians, graduates, dropouts. We had the highest job participation rate ever seen in the history of this country because he was ending globalization of this country and focusing on America first. And that's the way it should be. Each country should be responsible for taking care of their own people. Globalization seems to be falling apart. Like I said, there's some days it looks like we're winning and other days it doesn't. But listen to what Jerome Powell says.
Well, that is certainly a possible outcome here. I think you've seen questions about globalization, and this series of events around Ukraine certainly has the possibility of leading to a more fragmented political situation and economic situation. You saw Secretary Yellen's speech this week about looking to, I think she called it friendshoring. So I think there's a lot of thinking going on like that. You know, the globalization that we had benefits to it, and it had costs.
He said had. Is this agenda falling apart?
Involved in it. And, you know, these are really questions more for elected governments, I would say, than they are for a central bank. But there would certainly be a different world. It might be a world of perhaps higher inflation, perhaps lower productivity, but more resilient, more robust supply chains if we were to have. The supply chains that we had were very efficient, but quite fragile, it turned out. So
No, that's how capitalism works. You don't bail companies out. You don't bail banks out. If they fail because of piss poor management, piss poor policies. Either these companies can regroup, rethink about their business plan, and come back with a more successful one and thrive in the business environment, or they fail. That's how capitalism is successful. We don't bail them out. If they can't produce a product or a service that the American people want, then they fail. This forces companies to rethink, innovate, change technology, and continue to thrive and search for what it is that the people want in their lives. This way, they're servicing our wants and needs and not their own personal wants and needs.
Emerging markets and developing economies that said, hey, we have achieved so much because of this integrated global economy. It is irresponsible to make the world poorer.
Did she just say it's irresponsible to make the world poor? But earlier in this conversation, she was talking about, I think it's coming up actually. She talks about how we printed so much money that countries around the world are forced to devalue their currency. So whose policies and decisions are making the world poorer? Look at the countries around the world that are forced to devalue their currencies. Venezuela, Zimbabwe, just to name a couple, because of bad government decision-making and bad policies. So no, they are not trying to make the world richer. They're trying to make themselves richer. So of course she says, well, we sat around and we decided that together was a good, no. That's you guys deciding that, not the citizens of the world.
I think we are not paying sufficient attention to the law of unintended consequences. We take decisions with an objective in mind and rarely think through what may happen that is not our objective.
This moment of honesty is going to come back to haunt this woman. Listen to what she's saying. They are too nearsighted, too focused on the immediate future and not long term. They made bad decisions. These are the same people that want to continue to rule the world. This is easily probably one of the biggest mistaken slips of honesty by any bureaucrat.
And then we wrestle with the impact of it. Take any decision that is a massive decision, like the decision that we need to spend to support the economy. And at that time, we did recognize that may lead to too much money in circulation, too few goods.
But whoa, she was hesitant. You see her, it almost looked like she was covering her mouth, trying to make a gesture that you need to shut up. It almost looks that way. And she slowly but hesitantly comes out with the truth. Can we watch that one more time? Because that is classic.
Recognize that may lead to
shut up.
Too much money in circulation, too few goods, but didn't really quite think through the consequence in a way that upfront would have informed better what we do. And I subscribe entirely to what...
So there you have it. She said that the central banks were printing too much money. Now you have to ask yourself, with such a brutal confession of honesty, is this planned? Is this what they're going to come to us and say? Look, we made a mistake, but we know how to fix it. They create the problem and then present the solution. They're going to say, well, you know what? We screwed up. You know what we need to do to better regulate banks, to better regulate the government, to keep them from spending, from creating too much money? We need the central bank digital currency. Do you see that coming up next? When I heard this today, there's a glimmer of hope out there. Glimmer. Canada, I don't know who this guy is here, but he is running for prime minister. And I don't know anything about him. You do. So I look forward to your comments down below. But what this man is about to say is mind-blowing. He wants to audit this central bank. We threatened to audit our central bank here, the Federal Reserve, and they threatened to smash our economy if we did. Not only do they want to audit their central bank to account for every damn dollar that went out the door that they printed, but guess what else they're doing? They're going to outlaw the central bank digital currency. I'm not even kidding. Let's listen in because this is wonderful.
Thank you very much for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Many Canadians are hanging on by a thread today. Inflation has now reached a 30-year high, 6.7%. House prices have doubled in 7 years, up 100% since Justin Trudeau took office, 50% just in the last 2 years alone.
Justin Trudeau, Macron also are graduates of the Global Youth Leadership put out by Klaus Schwab. So you can see that their policies and decision making that they made were all in line with other countries. They were trying to force the world into this agenda.
This is the result of government money printing that has sent more dollars chasing fewer goods, driving higher prices. Justin Trudeau has doubled the debt in just the last 7 years. He has done that by requiring the central bank print more money to pay for his spending. More money chasing fewer goods always equals higher prices. So inflationary deficits send more money chasing fewer goods, driving higher prices. Inflationary taxes make it more expensive for businesses to produce those goods and services. The result is people feel like they're losing control of their lives. Maybe it's the single mother who's skipping meals so that her kids don't have to because she's part of the 4 in 5 Canadian families that have had to cut back on their diet because of food inflation. Maybe it's the working guy who can't afford to drive to work because it's $2 a liter for gas. Or maybe it's the 32-year-old woman living in her mother's basement because she can't afford $874,000 for the average house today. That is Justinflation. But it is the result of very deliberate policies that have driven up the cost of living, inflated the wealth of the rich, and the cost of living of everybody else. Worse yet, we lack accountability. Here in Canada, there is no independent audit appointed to oversee the $400 billion of transactions that the Bank of Canada has carried out to finance Justin Trudeau's spending. Right now, the finance minister gets to handpick the auditor rather than, as is the case in New Zealand, Australia, and the United Kingdom, having an independent audit of the central bank. And so I have with me here today Mr. Andrew Scheer, who has proposed a law to bring us in line with other Commonwealth countries, to give Canadians the accountability over their money that they deserve, and to ensure that this kind of disastrous inflationary policy never happens again. As Andrew correctly pointed out, Justin Trudeau has threatened the independence of the Bank of Canada by forcing it to print $400 billion of new money, causing today's 30-year highs in inflation, doubling housing prices, attacking the poor, and helping the rich. And that is why I am announcing today that a Poilievre government will amend the law to allow the Auditor General to probe and investigate the financial transactions of the Bank of Canada. Furthermore, I will put forward a motion in Parliament to have the Auditor General carry out a full investigation into the $400 billion of inflationary money printing that the government has done since 2020 that has caused the inflation crisis we have today. Beyond that, the government, now that they've failed to do their singular job of keeping inflation low, they propose to give themselves even more power. The central bank is now promoting a possible proposal to bring in a digital currency controlled by the government. Now, let's start off by asking what's new. We all know that Canadians have digital money already. It's called a bank account. We have debit cards, credit cards, PayPal, email transfers.
Come on, admit it for like a fraction of a second. You're like, this guy must listen to Pimpy's videos, because Pimpy's been saying that same thing now for over a year. Why do we need a central bank digital coin? We already have digital banking. I could take my ATM card and purchase anything at any moment. We don't need a central bank digital coin. I'm telling you, this guy must listen to my videos.
And plenty of other ways that people can transact the Canadian dollar digitally without the Bank of Canada controlling it. So what's the difference that this new digital currency by the central bank would bring? The answer, of course, is that it would be deposited in a government bank account. A central bank digital currency would mean that Canadians would have their money deposited with the government rather than with a private financial institution, and that the central bank would then be in direct competition with commercial banks. Of course, this would bring no new benefit to consumers. We already have all of the technological benefits of electronic transfers of cash today. But it would bring plenty of new risks. By the admission of the central bank itself in one of its policy papers on the subject, this policy could lead to a bank run. A bank run is when people move their money out of an individual bank en masse, destabilizing that bank and causing financial panic. And that could happen if people were incentivized to move their money into a government bank account because of promises of state-subsidized interest payments or other artificial advantages. Furthermore, the government controls your bank account. It can surveil what you're doing, what you're spending, and potentially abuse your civil liberties. And we saw this just several months ago when the Prime Minister invoked the Emergencies Act and in order to freeze the bank accounts of his political opponents. Imagine the extra power that he would have over people's financial lives if their deposits were in the possession of the central bank.
This is what I'm talking about. This is the greatness of God. This is why evil never can prevail. They become too cocky. They become too bold in their criminality. They flaunt it. They abuse it to the point where it comes back and bites them in the butt. So you heard what he said, and many of you heard from Turtle Man many of times. You guys will see me whip out Turtle Man from time to time. This is the Bank of International Settlement. This is what that Canadian man is talking about. BIS is the central bank to central banks. They're the big dogs. Everything is ran through them and then filtered down to the other central banks. This is Augustine. He's one of the big wigs over there at the Bank of International Settlements. Listen to the way he describes what's going to happen with the central bank digital currency. And keep in mind, when you deposit your money in the bank, you become the bank's liability. So when he says the central bank's liability, he's talking about you.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today.
So that's a problem to them because they don't know who's using what money and what it is they're buying with it. That's none of their dang business.
A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability.
They will have absolute control of what you can and cannot do with that central bank digital currency.
And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
They will have the technology to make you do what they want. That's what he was alluding to, that these people have already told us what their intentions are.
Furthermore, the central bank would have an unfair competitive position because it can artificially create cash out of thin air, something that commercial banks could not match. That means that it could effectively force Canadians to move their money over in order to get state-subsidized interest payments, all of which would lead to far more inflation. We've seen what happens when government has too much control of our money. Runaway inflation. We're paying for it today.
Plus, if the bank decides to go into zero or negative interest rates, you can't pull your money out. Essentially, by leaving your money in that account, you lose money. See, when the interest rates are being paid and you have your money in a savings account, you get a percentage of that money. But when they're down to zero or negative interest rates, that's you paying the bank to store your money where they can use it to their benefits. Negative interest rates, you pull the money out of the bank, put it into commodities like gold, silver, precious metals. That keeps you from losing your purchasing power. If we go to the central bank digital currency, you can't stop that. They could do whatever they want with your money.
The last thing we need is to give government and politicians more control of our money after they have failed so disastrously over the last 7 years. So, A Poilievre government will ban a central bank digital currency and allow Canadians to have the economic and financial liberty that they deserve. I'm running for Prime Minister to give Canadians back control of their lives by making Canada the freest nation on earth. That means tackling inflation, making life affordable, protecting the purchasing power of your paycheck and your money. It also means taking control of money away from bankers and politicians and giving it back to the people. And that is exactly what a Poilievre government will do.
I don't know who this guy is, Canadians. You guys know him better than I do. Is this guy full of crap or is he the real deal? I've seen him on more than one occasion speak in Parliament against Justin Trudeau. He appears to be a fighter for the Canadian people. You heard what he said. He is going to create the freest country in the world. Americans need to pay attention to what's going on. What we're seeing happening right now looks good, but that doesn't mean you should sit back, eat your popcorn, watch the clones, okay? No, continue trudging forward. Continue fighting. Continue to look for politicians like this guy. Now, I am going to dig into him a little bit because I want to see if he is one of the graduates of the global youth leadership movement. Because if he is, then he's full of crap and he's misleading people just so he could get into power now that Justin Trudeau has been tarnished. Anyways, you guys, let me know what you think. Hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. Because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. I'll catch you later. I'm out.